How y'all doing? Hope everybody been good, and I hope y'all staying safe out there in that weather. Got y'all a quick little video, and in today's video, we're gonna be talking about the Next Millionaire Next Door. And if you've ever heard of the book The Millionaire Next Door, it was written by Mr. Thomas J. Stanley in the 90s. This book is a more updated version of that one, and it's written by his daughter. So this was written about 10 years ago, and it's basically a book where they're researching millionaires in America. They're looking at how did they get to where they get to, their daily habits, how they spend their money, etc. And I think that's really, really important, because not even talking about just millionaires, but when we're talking about like real wealth, real money, I want to emphasize that that's usually a real quiet, boring game. And I don't think a lot of us realize that in our community. And if I look down, it's just me looking at my notes, but I want to give the example of, I used to play basketball in school. So with me playing basketball, how I'm getting better is I'm trying to look at the people that's better than me, and I'm doing what they're doing. So say I'm in middle school and I'm looking at the varsity players, and I'm seeing different things they're doing. Okay, I'm gonna go do that too. Or I'm watching the NBA players. How do they practice? Okay, I'm gonna go do that too. And it's sort of kind of the same thing when it comes to finances, but it gets tricky because, if you like me, you grew up at a young age where you're looking at the celebrities, and whether it be the rappers or the entertainers or the athletes, and you're seeing what they're doing with their money, and you think you're supposed to do the same thing when you grow up. And also from a young age with that, you're sort of kind of taught to buy things, and the things you buy is a reflection of your financial success. So, you realize you become an adult, hopefully sooner than later, you're like, oh shoot, that's not really financially smart. Because if you look at people that have generated real wealth, they drive used cars. We're talking about Toyotas, Fords, things of that nature. They don't wear designer. They're very frugal. They didn't really have to grind to where they got to, and that's sort of kind of like the opposite of what we've been taught from kids. And you become grown, and it's not one of these things where you could just flip the script and just magically, if you ain't never been able to save money, you just magically start saving money. That's like me, a person been smoking cigarettes 20 years, and I tell them, hey, stop smoking cigarettes. You think they just magically gonna be able to stop smoking cigarettes? Same with the finances. Like, if a person's never been able to save money, or they're not really, they weren't never really taught anything about finances, they're not magically just gonna just start being good with their money, So it's one of these things where you have to really unwire your brain and learn the habits and really learn. And it could be really hard, but it's definitely possible. So that's why I want to go over this book today, of talking about like people that's people that's made it, and not in the sense of they're super duper high income earners. Like, you got people in this book making $60,000 a year, and they didn't really did the right thing with their money. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, compared to being high income earners, which most people will never be. Not being pessimistic, but just statistically proven. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And not necessarily a review of the book, but just going over certain highlights. And the first thing I want to talk about is saving 10%. So one of the people they interviewed in this book, she was emphasizing how since college she's been saving 10%. And I think that's really important. For one, just saving 10% of their money, because I see that a lot with the financial books, not just this one, but saving 10 to 20%, and also the age she started saving. So the earlier you start, the better it's going to be for you. Because if you start early, when you get in, like, say in high school, you get your first job, or college, you already have that habit ingrained in you. When you get that first big job or your real job, you still going to be saving. So starting early, because what we were just talking about, most people didn't get an early start, and they have to learn later in life. So if you already have the good habit of saving, go ahead and start that. And if you have kids, starting to get them to start saving. So you giving allowance money, making sure they're putting 10% of it up, and then explaining to them why. So then when they're older and they get a job, they already know to save 10%. The other thing I want to talk about is fast tracking. So the person that they interviewed in this book, they was able to retire at 35. So you ever heard of like, have you ever heard of like the FIRE community, financial independence, retire early, and things like that? This is where we have people in their early 40s retiring, and one way they got there is by saving as much money and investing as much money as humanly possible. 10% cool, but if you want to get there even faster, we were talking about financial independence and wealth, you got to do a lot more. And I was talking about the video where I was talking about my ego, and I was asking the question of, can I attain wealth by living by myself? And the answer is yes. I can still save money, I still can invest money, but it it gets a lot faster when I can get a roommate. So because when I have a roommate and I'm able to, it's an extra $500 a month at my disposal. Now I can save and invest even more, and that $500 a month over time definitely adds up. And the more money you have saved combined with the lower your expenses equates to more freedom. So you got to find even ways to keep your expenses even lower, and you're able to save more money. You're able to achieve financial freedom and financial a lot faster. Next thing we got is income is not wealth. Generating income isn't the end goal. Income is what you bring home today. Wealth is what you have tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So income is the first part. What you do with that income is the second part. And it's super duper easy. Spend less than you make, save and invest the difference. Where it becomes hard is what we was just talking about. From kids, we were taught to spend our money a certain way, and then when we get older, we have our friends and they're doing this with their money, and then we look on social media, you got people your age doing this with their money. We have to learn, for one, we have to become aware, like, what do the people with the money do? They don't spend their money on dumb stuff. They don't spend more than they make. They're saving and investing. 10%, they're doing even more. They're frugal. They're not, we're going to talk about it. Net worth is your balance sheet. The net of your assets minus your liabilities. So figuring out this number is really important. Look at your assets. Look at your liabilities. Assets minus liabilities. A lot of us realize we have a negative net worth. And that's fine. But what way can we, for one, being aware of the problem, and then how can we switch that to the positive? Frugality is a common theme amongst this group. And that's like the opposite of our culture. So if you look at our culture, we live in a very spend culture. And I think that's a problem if we're being honest. Why is being frugal, why is being cheap so frowned upon in our community? And I remember when I was younger, I used to sort of kind of, in a sense, be like, excuse me, sorry, y'all. I used to be sort of kind of ashamed with like, dang, I don't spend a lot of money and I don't really buy a lot of things. But now I'm sort of starting to embrace that. Like, I'm trying to show people the other side of like how your life look when you don't buy a lot of things. I'm able to save money. I'm debt free. I don't really have to worry about bills as much, and not in the sense of I make all this money because I'm not a high income earner, but in the sense of I keep my expenses as low as humanly possible. And remember, we watched that video in one of my old videos. We was talking about how African Americans, we're the brokest race. So if we're the brokest race, why are we spending like we're the richest? And not saying every black person is broke. That's 1,000% what I'm not saying, because you have a lot of black people that are doing really, really, really good. But say if you are a person, not even if you're black, just in general, like if you are a person that doesn't have as much money, don't be out here spending like you're a millionaire, because that's why you don't have money. Like all your money is going straight to stuff. You should probably look at being frugal. And I'm gonna keep emphasizing, trying to bring people to that other side of like, it's okay to save money. It's okay to be financially responsible, because like I said, our culture, we live in a culture where being financially irresponsible is sort of kind of like a good thing. And I think down the line, 10 years from now, your older self would thank you for being smart with your money. And ball in moderation. Like, I'm not saying don't spend none of your money, because that would be a miserable life. But, be strategic with your fun spending. Let me see. Because that's what I was talking about in the beginning. One of the people in this book, they talked about how they made $60,000 a year and they had over $1 million net worth. So I think we can relate to that. If you're like me, guys, I'm not a high income earner. So okay, I'm trying to do what they're doing. You make $60,000 a year and you have over $1 million net worth. What did you do to get there? We got to start looking at the people that got there like us. A lot of us don't make $500,000 a year, $250,000 a year. Maybe we want to look at learning to generate that much income down the line, but as of right now, maybe you're not a super duper high income earner because you're young in your career or you're not as established yet. That's cool. So don't be spending like you're making $250,000 a year, because that's not a formula for financial success. Most millionaires have a budget. Knowing how much you bring in, how much you spend, and creating a budget or spending plan to ensure the difference is in the positive camp. So if you have it where millionaires, people with a, $1 million net worth, they're budgeting their money, why can't we? And a lot of times people always ask me the question of, hey, what should I do to be, better with my finances, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing I always say is you have to start tracking your income and expenses. You have to know what's going in, what's going out. You have to see a financial picture. And most people I tell that to never do it. And I just had to ask the question of like, why can't we do the basics? Why do we have to think we have to go from 0 to 100? Why do we have to just wait forever on these get rich quick plays that never happen? And like, we've been sitting in the same position for 15 years when we could have been doing the basics and gradually climbing. These are what these people are doing. They gradually climbed. They built it. They didn't wait on the handout. Most of these people were self-made. They didn't have no like money from their parents. I'm not saying that in the sense of like that's a bad thing if you do, but I'm saying in the sense of like they really grinded up. A lot of people that were in this book. So why can't we? Why do we have to wait on the get rich quick plays? Like, no, start with the basics. Start with your situation. Look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, I'm going to work. Instead of just sitting in the same position, not wanting to do what it takes. The more you say that discipline requires going against the tide, doing the opposite of what your friends are doing, and also unlearning how you grew up. So yes, when it comes to trying to achieve financial success, it's the God's honest truth. Most people don't ever achieve that. So when we're talking about your friends, family, things of that nature, people gonna look at you like you're weird. People gonna be like, oh, you don't do this, that. It's a reason, because when we're talking about achieving wealth, it's not common. You have to be different than the average person. Economically successful people don't follow the crowd. If you're trying to achieve wealth, you're not buying what everybody else is buying. You're saving money, which is not common. You're not doing what everybody else is doing. That's just the God's honest truth. So don't be surprised when you have those type of comments and things. Don't get offended by it or anything like that. It's just you're on your journey, which most people aren't going to be on. And eventually most people catch on, but it'll be later down the line. And let's talk about the glittering rich. So you do have people, the very, very small percentage of people that make so much money, they don't need the budget and they don't got to be strategic. Like, they could just spend their money as much as they want because they make so much money. That's a very, very, very small percentage of people. You might be a person watching this and you're that person, but the average person is not. So if you're not the glittering rich where you just make all this money and you don't have to pay attention to your account, don't be living like it. Hyper-spending parents tend to raise hyper-spending children. And I'm not going to harp on this one too much because I don't have any children. I can't really be telling people how to raise their children. That's not really cool. But I do see where that makes sense. Like, what I have seen in my life where people that were super duper spoiled as kids and got whatever they want, when they became adults, especially if they weren't taught about finances along the way, as adults, they get whatever, they just get all the stuff they want, and they're not really able to save money because from birth they always had where they were able to get what they want, and it sort of kind of leads them down the hole of not being financially savvy. And when we talking about like going to college and stuff, the people that were studying this book by far weren't the smartest people. So you had the people that was a lot of them went to school, like you were talking about the millionaires in this book, but they weren't always like the top of their class, and there was some of them that didn't. And I want to emphasize that, like, whatever path you take, you can achieve wealth from whatever path, but it comes down to like, okay, whatever you're doing to get the money, what is you doing with the money that you're getting? So whether you graduate high school and you go to college, or you graduate high school, you go into the military, you graduate high school, you go get a trade, is you can achieve wealth in whatever lane. It's what you're doing with the money that you're getting. The people in this book that were interviewed in this book, they weren't on social media a lot. So how much time do you spend on social media? What else could you be doing with that time? And I'm on social media as well, so I'm sort of kind of talking to myself with this. But say if you're on social media 4 hours a day, what else could you be doing? You could be building a business with that 4 hours. You could be working on your school. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not really doing anything for us. I mean, you do have some people that make money off social media, but most of us don't. So when we're on social media, we're just scrolling, looking at people's lives, wasting our life, really. Not wasting our life, but wasting our time that we could be doing something else with that. And that goes back to the conversation where we was talking about deep work, where you just really locked in on whatever your task. So usually, you be on, say you want to work, you got schoolwork to do, you working on your business, you work for about 5 minutes, then you pick up your phone, you look on Instagram, then you work for another, say 3 minutes, then you look at the group chat, you work for another 4 minutes, and you looked up, it's been 3 hours, you ain't really got nothing done. So you remember, it was it's a book by Kyle Newport, and he talks about deep work, where you take some time out your day, where it should be like 2-3 hours, and you work on whatever task you're doing. So say you get off work and you want to work on your business, that 2 to 3 hours is strictly business. You put your phone up, you lock in, and that I used to try the deep work thing, and it really, really does help, because you really get things done when you can just laser focus on that task at hand. So I used to do little stuff like, I would get to the extreme where I just leave my phone in the living room when I'm in my room. I remember sometimes I would leave my phone in the car, because I know for a fact I'm not going to go all the way to the car while I'm working. And what I noticed, though, I was able to get so much more done because I was just able to focus. Yeah, I know when you got that phone in you're not going to be able to do as much work. And that's just 1,000%. So asking the question, like, how much time do you spend on social media, and what else could you be doing with that time? It's sort of kind of like, you're wasting your time being on there because it's not really that productive. A lot of people in this study were reported to be extremely satisfied with life. Definitely want to talk about that. And I think why is because when you had the conversation of money doesn't bring you happiness and money isn't everything, it's usually because people got the money and spent their money on dumb stuff that doesn't equate to happiness. You notice a lot of people in this book, like I said, they drive regular cars and they focus on their families and they focus on doing the right things with the money. So I think that's should be a super duper highlight. Like, money isn't evil. Money isn't you. It's what you do with the money. So if you're doing, usually a lot of people start saying stuff like that when they get the money and they go out and buy the stuff that they thought was gonna make them happy and it didn't make them happy. That's why. So if you're actually being smart with your money and you're realizing like I'm not a materialistic person, so I can speak from that. Like, usually materialism doesn't equate to happiness. Like, you remember we talked about the study of the happiest countries in the world. America's the richest country, but they're not even top 10 when it comes to happiness. So stop being so materialistic. Well, I'm not gonna, and well, let me not say that, because it's one of these things. Get it out your system. Because I remember when I was younger and older people used to tell me stuff, and it's like, I still wasn't listening because I just had to experience it. So, yeah, it might be where you get the car now, or you go get the big house now. And for some of us, it might not even be bad. Like, you might really like that. But a lot of people will realize it usually doesn't equate to happiness when we talk about materialistic things, especially materialistic things that we can't afford. And I know most people are not going to agree with me, like, bro, what is he talking about? But it's just an opinion. And like I said, I'm not a materialistic person, so I can speak from truth, or speak from personal experience. So, like, being not materialistic, and I'm not saying I'm just super duper happy person, but in that sense of like not really caring about things, it does help me a lot. Where else we at? We talked about that, and a lot of folks in this book were business owners. So it's sort of kind of like we were saying with like when you go to college, you go to military, it's sort of kind of the same thing. You can become wealthy being a employee. You can become wealthy being a business owner. But with being a business owner, we have to understand like it's a risk to it. So I think as long as we have that understanding, that's cool. And I think a lot of us should approach taking that risk the right way. With business, there's winners and losers. That's just how it's always going to be. Excuse me. And being honest, it's more losers than winners. If you look all throughout history, you hear the big names of the people that won. Excuse me. It was a lot more people that tried to go against them along the way that lost, and you don't never hear their names. So with business, you got to be able to take that risk and understand it. And, you know, I think it's a good risk to take if you approach it the right way, because it could be life-changing for sure. And a lot of these people in this book, when I say the right approach, they created margin in their lifestyle to be able to have some flexibility and freedom. What I said in the beginning, the more money you have saved combined with the lower your expenses equals the more freedom you have. So say you want to go off in that business and you have money saved, you can go off in that business because you have money saved. So you leave your job and you living off your savings right now while you try to get your business off the ground, but you was able to do that because you had money saved, compared to if you didn't have any money saved and you tried to go out and start a business and it took a little while to get off, now you're drowning. Or, okay, you have money saved and you're not really liking the job and the career at the moment, so you can quit and then have some time to, okay, breathe, now look at what else you're trying to get into. So it goes back to the same thing, just saving money. When you have a couple dollars, you have options. Money isn't about being rich. Money is about giving you choices. You want to be able to have options. You want to be able to have a little bit of freedom. A lot of those, we're talking about having the multiple sources of income, and they call it moonlighting. So they got to it. You know, I don't want to put a harp on it, but hey, you got to get to it out here. With the business owners in the book, they talked about being in very niche, low-status businesses where competition is light or non-existent. And I think that makes perfect sense. Because, okay, say you have a business where it's a lot more common, you're going to have a lot more competitors, compared to if you have a business that's not as common, it's less competitors. And it's a higher probability of being successful. Even when you're being in like a business where it's like super duper common and stuff, you still have a chance of being successful, but you have a higher probability if it's less common, it's more niche. In one study her dad did, 4/5 millionaire business owners said they chose their specific business because it gave them a high probability for being financially independent. And one example was bull semen, bull semen business owner. So they extract semen from bulls and I guess they sell it. Like, I've never heard of that, but that's what I'm talking about. Like, super duper niche, and I bet you they make a whole lot of money. Like, I ain't saying you gotta go out here and try to sell bull semen, but you know, that should get your wheels rolling. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Just going down the lanes of not doing. I always say it's less traffic in the. Hold up, I forgot how it is. Hold up, yeah, I gotta remember how I said it. I found it. I had to go on my notes and find the quote. It's no traffic when you in your own lane. Like, obviously in this situation, you're in business, you probably gonna have a few competitors, but it's less. So it's pretty cool. And then another thing to talk about is perseverance when it comes to business. You have to keep going. One common theme I see sometimes is where when things get hard, we just give up. And that's where it should get fun. Like, you should be expecting the hard, especially when it comes to business. So, you know, after 3 months, if it ain't been where it's supposed to be, that's cool. That's normal. Keep working. You know, most people that start a business is not just gonna magically just jump off the ground and everything will be. It would be cool if it was, but if not, That's normal. Expect that. Just keep going. And one thing I said caught in the book, every dollar that you save loses some of its purchasing power every year because of inflation. This group of people invest their money. And that's what I was talking about a couple of videos ago, where inflation is going to happen in the modern economy. So you have to find places to put your money that's going to beat inflation. It's going to preserve your purchasing power. If you have $500 in cash, that $500 in cash not going to buy you the same. It's going to buy you less 5 years from now. It's going to buy you less a year from now. So we have to understand that. And a lot of people, when it comes to asking why should a person invest, it's because inflation is here. Inflation is going to erode your money. And I think that's everything I want to talk about today. If y'all have any questions, please reach out to me. Please like, comment, subscribe. Definitely appreciate y'all. Tell a friend if y'all do like any of the videos. And also let me know what kind of videos y'all want. I'm trying to stay consistent. I'm trying to keep the ball rolling. But like I said, man, I truly appreciate y'all if y'all did watch the whole video. And y'all stay blessed.